Today we're talking about everything keeping students playing in between lessons, which of course, as we all know, used to be called practice. One of the most fundamental things, isn't it, Steve?
Absolutely, and this is why we teach, and this is why students want to learn, because it's about what happens outside the lesson that's just as important. And for us, the starting point for that is all about relevance. So it's the first R of our real teaching, and that's about understanding and knowing about the student, what inspires them, why they were learning in the first place, what kind of music they like, what they've got going on in their life, so we can make our music and our learning really relevant to that individual student. So obviously you've been teaching as well, Ben, for a long time. What kinds of things do you do to make your lessons really relevant?
Yeah, I think one of the keys for me to making sure that all my lessons are relevant to that specific student is getting to know the student. Like knowing about them, knowing what kind of music they like, what they're into. I think that is fundamental, because from there, I know as the teacher what skills they need to be taught to, progress and achieve what we want them to progress and achieve. But they guide the way that we get.
Absolutely. And obviously as teachers as well, we've got this responsibility, haven't we? So that it's not just about going, you really like rock music and sticking within that. Actually, we've also got responsibility to broaden people's horizons as well. So actually, that's really just an access point for it. And from there, we can start taking students on this nice journey. And that also links in with the playing at home, doesn't it? Because then you can start going, hi, if you like this, maybe also have a look at this one as well. And you can almost give people a bit of an opportunity to go and explore their own other music as well.
And that's such a big difference from, here's the piece of music we're doing, go home and practice it, isn't it? I mean, it's a world of difference between, okay, we've been working on all this great Bob Marley stuff you're really into, have you ever tried playing ska music or punk, here are some other things you can explore.
Absolutely, and again, it links into with our kind of approach and ethos there around skills-based learning. And there's probably a whole nother episode just in skills-based learning about how what we're trying to do is provide students and give them the skills so that they can apply that to any piece of music they ever see. It's not just about playing that one individual piece of music and great, now I can play Guns N' Roses. Marvellous. Actually, what we'd like you to be able to do is play Guns N' Roses, but also play the Beatles, play whatever else in there as well. So that skill set is really important to enable pupils to go on that journey as well.
Well, the interesting thing is that we're kind of talking about this in terms of ability and how it grows a student's ability, but that's one of the absolute key aspects in developing their musicality. If they can understand the similarities between guitar, for example, the both guitarists, between a Guns N' Roses song and a Beatles song, there are clear similarities they can draw based on an entire musical history, and that is really amazing for students to be able to pick up on.
Absolutely, and there's a whole kind of historical thread to it as well, isn't there? I mean, I did something the other week where you can very easily go from Oasis to Beatles back to Bach in about 3 songs because of the influences and how it all links together. So enabling students and giving them that little bit of insight and that knowledge to, and almost sometimes permission is all it needs, is permission to go and experiment, go on and explore and let people go on their own path. It's a bit like that button that used to be on Spotify, isn't it, where it said, if you like this, you'll like this. It's exactly that. You want people to go and explore and discover that whole new world out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really fascinating. Like, if you took Oasis at the moment, it's a big talking point in a lot of the music world, but if you took a student through that process, it'd be really interesting to see how that kind of comes out. But that's a very different approach, isn't it? So why do you think that approach helps students stay motivated?
It's because it's putting ownership into the hands of the student. They're ultimately taking responsibility for their own decisions, their own choices, and all what we're doing is actually, I'm not really seeing it for teachers, we're coaches and mentors. What we're doing is we're enabling them to go on their own individual journey, rather than us saying, this is what you must do, is actually going, here's some skills, off you go. And so it's pretty much brought the emphasis on that pupil-led kind of journey, if you like, so they can take more control of their interest in where they want their learning to go.
And I think, to me, that's the difference between that. I mean, we try not to use the word practice because we think of it as playing. You're playing your instrument. But that is one of the differences between practice and playing, isn't it? Is that one is more exploratory than the other.
Yeah, I mean, practice has got this idea, this connotation has it, of you doing something round and round and round until you get absolutely perfect. And you know what? Like, music's not really like that. Yes, you need to practice your skills and you've got to develop your technique and bits and pieces. But for me, technique is just it's a means to a musical end. It's just there so that I can do something musical with it. So actually explaining how that actually happens, this comes where music is a vehicle kind of approach. How that happens could be any piece of music. And in fact, the more diverse and the bigger range for the students to explore, the better, because what they're actually doing. We also shouldn't as well forget about the importance of creativity in playing as well between lessons. Because an awful lot of students really enjoy that freedom to create on their own. Getting away from that perfectionism idea of like, this is how the song goes. Get away from it, write your own stuff and play around with those skills that you've got. And that's something that I didn't have as a child, because I'm a classically trained musician, always had a piece of music, scared the hell out. But for you, that must be something that's just the norm.
Yeah, I think, well, I came from a sort of background in playing a lot of blues and jazz. And I think, interestingly, I think it's the opposite. You normally get given like one ingredient and you know, make the pie around it. You know, it's and that's, if you look at anything like the jazz real book or something, you get given the head, and that's just the main part of the music, the kind of key phrases. And then the rest of it, you're expected to contribute something creative yourself. And if you think about music in that way, it's really the opposite to a classical approach.
Absolutely, but it's such a key component of it all, and that's all composition is, even from a classical point of view, is it's improvisation. It's people playing around.
One thing he said there that I'm just going to re-bring up is music as a vehicle. Give a brief explanation as to what that is.
Yeah, so this really is one of the big underpinning kind of principles of the real teaching approach, which is if we're teaching a skill, which might be understanding what accidentals are or understanding particular rhythms, then actually you don't need to base it around a particular piece of music. So what we're trying to do is to enable a student to understand and develop this particular skill. And so therefore it can be about finding any piece of music that is student relevant, or that's relevant to the student rather, that you can deliver that skill through. It could be, if I was teaching, quite often the first lesson on the guitar is about looping the strings. And rather than just playing some rather dull exercise, we might be doing the bass line of Chasing Cars by Snow Patrol. We might be doing a 12-bar blues in there. So we might be doing
Nothing Else Matters by
Nothing Else Matters. Exactly. So there's sudden, when you look at it through a certain lens, you can be delivering a skill using lots of different pieces of music. So therefore, means that we can then tailor that piece of music directly to that student, make it more relevant. Means it chances are you're able to play that more outside of lessons.
Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give to a student, maybe a teenage student or one of our adult students that wants to self-motivate themselves to play more between lessons?
Look, the two main things that stick out to me straight away is explore. Like there's a whole world these days out there. You've got Spotify, you've got YouTube, there's loads of apps out there available where you can go and explore stuff. So go and find stuff and research the music you like, or go on that little journey. Then Google it, because you put in whatever the name of the song is with a like chord chart or something like that. There's going to be a version of it there somewhere for you. So that'll be the first thing. The second thing is I'd get creative as well. So use those skills and start writing your own stuff. Just do what sounds good for you, because ultimately there are no rules. So as long as it sounds good to you, brilliant. No one else can really complain about it. So use those skills. And then for those who want to just stretch a little bit more, take yourself out of the comfort zone. Maybe get into a bit of performance opportunities or recording stuff and sharing with people. Maybe try and put on a little concert somewhere. Those kind of things, because that gives you a bit of a motivation. It gives you a kind of end point, as it were, something to aim for as well.
Yeah, the recording thing is one that I think my playing got exponentially better when I started doing more recording. There didn't have to be recording in a studio. Everyone pretty much has access to recording software now. If it's Garageband or whatever it is, there's a load of free apps that you can use. And for me, I always liked writing music. So writing was a creative outlet, but actually the recording process of writing was teaching me to play in time, play along with a metronome, teaching me about texture and all the different, how one instrument fits within a group of instruments. And of course,
as well, alongside that as well, thing that jumped out to me then was actually playing with other people as well. That collaboration strand is just as important actually, because music then becomes a social thing rather than a bedroom thing. And it helps develop all of those skills that you were just talking about there as well. It's just a thought as well, maybe some of those apps and bits and pieces, the recording software programs talking about, maybe we should have a list of them as well against the video, so we can just give some people a few links to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And then last question. So let's say you're in a different situation where you are a parent of one of our younger learners. How would you, as a parent, support that playing between lessons?
This is the age-old thing, isn't it? Where the teacher writes to the parent writes to the teacher and says, "My son's just not practicing nothing. My daughter's." And it can be really frustrating as a parent. And when I was young, I can still remember I can hear my dad shouting upstairs to me, "Go and do your practice." I could still hear it. But I think things have changed and moved on since then as well, because I think what we need to do these days is to help create that environment for people. So there's a few little kind of key things. Firstly, as you've said already, let's call it playing, because that's what it's about. People want to play their instrument. So that's the first thing. We can create little routines, so we can attach our playing to something. So it might be that you set up that we're going to find a way of getting sons and daughters to play for 10 minutes before dinner. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes associated with something. It becomes a very kind of routine based. You could also try putting on some performances for people. So you could get friends or family over. Doesn't need to be anything major. It could be 2 or 3 people. It could be asking your son to play to you whilst you're doing the ironing. It's just about creating those opportunities in there. And you can even do the same as well with Zoom and various bits and pieces now. So, if you wanted to play to grandma or friends and family who are in other parts of the country or not able to make it that day, record it. Do it live on Zoom. Like, there's plenty of options.
Mm-hmm. And how about the kind of gamification music? Because one of the big challenges that I think parents, certainly the ones that I speak to here, one of the challenges they have is that students are getting very used to this instant gratification, the next level, and obviously we know that it can be a slow burn at times.
Yeah, and I actually, funny enough, I think there's an opportunity in there for us, because weirdly, when you look at how games work, we almost want to recreate that in a weird kind of way within music, because students spend hours and hours actually doing the same thing round and round and round, trying to get to that pot of gold and trying to get through that door or whatever. And when it doesn't work, they go back to the beginning of that level and they try it again. And they try it again and try it again until they get absolutely right to achieve it. And actually, we want to achieve that same thing. So I think there's an awful lot to be learned from there. And how we structure our lessons, how we structure our playing can also affect that. And again, that might be through apps and things like that. There's a lot of good apps that are out there at the moment that can help you with that kind of thing as well. What do you recommend? Like, what do you suggest for your students?
And well, for students that are more kind of beginner stages, the star levels that we have here are actually really good for that, because they do have that kind of quick progression between levels. And the whole idea behind those was that you get that quick progression between levels pre-grade 1, because we know that the journey from 0 to grade 1 can actually be quite a long one. So that's part of it. I think with my students, I like to think of songs in levels. Like if they want to play Seven Nation Army, for example, there's hundreds of different ways you can play Seven Nation Army. Until you can play it the way that it's recorded. And so for me, it's about trying to instill in my students the want to kind of explore and recreate the music as it is.
And with what you're saying, there's also a refinement of technique that goes on within that. Because yes, it's okay doing a slide up and down kind of thing, but there's a refinement to start using different fingers.
Yeah.
And that's hard, actually. Like, it takes a bit of a barrier to get through to make that sound good.
And the one thing that we have to be conscious of as teachers is that what you can't do is simplify a song like Seven Nation Army to a one finger thing and allow the students to think that's it. Because then they'll think, well, I've done that song, next song. And whilst it's great that they can play something that they're really excited about, and that's what we're hoping is that they get to the point where they're practicing it. So I'm so happy I can play this, but it doesn't sound quite like the song. And they go, yeah, this is why. And then we start moving up these levels.
And that's also developing another really key area of being a musician, which is those analytical kind of skills, and start almost doing a comparison, but in a positive way, going like, mine's sounding like this, but I can hear it sound like that.
Yeah.
How can I get to that point?
And you know, one of the coolest things actually that I use all the time is the slow down function on YouTube. Because if a student can play the song at 85%, they will want to play it at 100%.
Yeah, and it becomes really obvious actually, doesn't it? When you put it back to full speed, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's happened there?
It's like double speed.
Yeah, exactly. A little tip for people, like go onto YouTube and like search for whatever the song name is with play along, because there are bucket loads of them on there. And like you said, there's the speed shift function on there that keeps the still the same.
Yeah, and that's another great one as well. Yeah, if you can find a version of the song that has that is less the instrument that you play, so a drumless version or a guitarless version, it's a whole different world when you start playing it. Not along with, you know, when you're not playing along with Jimmy Page, you're playing along with the rest of the band.
Exactly, but that's also still weirdly another form of collaboration, isn't it? It just happened to be that it's recorded.
Yeah.
But it's giving that sense of something bigger than just yourself.